Hi, this is Dr. Chris Zimmer. I'm back, and I just wanted to say I hope you saw my last video or caught the pinned comment immediately after the eclipse on April 8th, that I thought now that we have a 40-day warning or a 40-day Jonah sign to a rapture, or at least a prospective rapture, on Pentecost, which is, depending on how you calculate it, it's either 40 or 41 days. And I also wanted to relate something that happened to me April 11th, and I thought this was rather interesting. If you notice the building here, there were three very bushy trees out in front of that building, and I looked out and I saw some fellow running down the street and waving, flapping his arms around his head, and I was wondering what in the world's going on. And then I looked over at the trees and I saw a huge swarm of bees. There must have been thousands of bees coming out of that, and it looked like the third tree. Maybe there was a beehive in there, and they called someone in to cut all the branches, I guess, and you can see it on the right-hand side there where they've cut all the branches off the bottom of that tree to remove the beehive. And also the same day, two doves showed up on my porch, and I haven't seen them since, but I thought there was some kind of a message there, probably to those people who count to three and cause trouble. So maybe this is a warning. Anyway, I thought that was rather interesting. And if you look at the Strongs for that date, 411, it says inexpressible, indescribable, that cannot be thoroughly related. So interesting. And in the news, we had several different aftershocks after that April 5th 4.8 magnitude quake. And of course, this is 3 days before the April 8th eclipse. And to have a magnitude 4.8, and then that draws our attention to it. But we had magnitude 2.6, according to a story in USA Today on 4/12. Read the story. Less than a week after a larger earthquake rattled New York City, magnitude 4.8 on 4/5, a magnitude 2.6 aftershock took place in New Jersey on the morning of April 10th. And this is according to the U.S. Geological Survey. But it didn't stop there. We've had another aftershock that was 2.6 magnitude on May 1st at Gladstone, New Jersey, and the story reads, a small earthquake was recorded around 7:15 a.m. Eastern Time, measuring magnitude 2.6, was approximately 1.6 miles near Gladstone, New Jersey, 43 miles west of New York City. Wednesday's earthquake was likely one of dozens aftershocks recorded since a 4.8 magnitude hit the region April 5th. And of course, that was, again, three days before that 4.8 eclipse. And the numerical value of the name Yahweh is 26. So could this be God marking these with his signature, saying, this is me doing this? Okay, and going back to the 84-week timeline, now as an afterthought, looking back at the April 8th, that was another huge sign, just like the galactic alignment, which I was calling the Rapture sign because that galactic alignment had 3 5s involved. It was 5 years from another galactic alignment, 5 hours, I believe, and 5 days to another sign after that. Anyway, a huge sign, all kinds of things going off on that. And then April 8th, of course, we had at least 8 pairs of day counts pointing inwards towards that eclipse. So that again was a massive sign, 2 massive signs. And it looks now like that is the Sign of Jonah eclipse, because it's an eclipse 40 days from Pentecost or Pentecost Eve. And it can be 40 days to Pentecost depending on how you count it, and I'll show you that in just a moment. And another interesting thing that happens, and there's another that I'll show you later on too, that sort of maps this out as a sign of Jonah. But on 5/19, on the day of Pentecost, the Groom asteroid is in Cetus, which is the whale. So we have a Groom. It's not the exact story of Jonah. Remember, Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days, 3 nights. But this time it's the Groom associated with Cetus the whales, but it's still giving us that imagery of the sign of Jonah. And it shows up on that day. It shows up on Pentecost. Also, I just want to call to your remembrance that the day before the eclipse, on 4/7, we had the moon occulting Venus, which reveals the time, 8:53:23 a.m. So that time that I've been giving you for nearly a year now, I believe, is still valid, and it looks like it may happen on Pentecost, because that is more relevant to that day than any other. It's the 3rd hour of the day, which was when the Holy Ghost came down, and this is approximately 9 o'clock in the morning. So I think we're really looking at Pentecost. And if we look at a sort of a time tree from April 8th, well, let's look at the April 7th at the top first. We see where the moon occults Venus at 8:53:23 a.m., but that's Mazatlan Standard Time. And we count to Pentecost, 5:19, at the same time, but in Israel Daylight Time. We have 41 days, 14 hours, or 1 month, 11 days. There's that 111 that's shown up since, giving this the 40-day warning, and I did that in a previous video. But again, 14 hours, and 14 is the number of deliverance. So we've got 41 or 111 associated with 14, deliverance. And 41, if you look in the upper left, is also associated with Revelation 4:1, where a door is standing open in heaven, and the Father says, "Come up here," and so on and so forth. So this is Revelation or Rapture speak. And we see in a number of different places 40 or 41 days. So let's go to the April 8th eclipse, and if we count the first row at the top, this is by pure day count. On the left, we have from 2/28/24, which we got mapped out for a 40-day warning, to the eclipse, 1 month, 11 days, and 40 days. And then on the right-hand side, 1 month, 11 days, and 41 days, depending on where you count it, since this is a leap year, and then going to 5/19, which is Pentecost, of course. And so we have a mixture of days. We have 40 and 41. But we have a solid pure day count giving 111 across the board. And that is a clue from Luke 17, and we'll explore that in just a moment. Now, if we go to the second row, this is by day and time count. We get 1 month, 11 days on the left from 2/28 and 40 days. But then we get 40 days on the right-hand side. However, we have 1 month, 10 days, and this is the only spot where 1 month and 10 days shows up. And this is on either side of 20202, when that Aleph Tav completed itself, just when it closed on the ground in Carbondale. That gave us the time 20202. And then if we count, of course, to the right to Pentecost, using the time now also, then we get that 1 month, 10 days, and that's the only spot we see that. And I thought it was interesting because we have 40 days across the board, but we have 1 month, 10 days on the one side, and the 40 days, of course, indicates sign of Jonah. And if we look up Strong's G110, we see immortality, imperishability, and freedom from death. So interesting information coming out of this. Talk a little bit about Pentecost, Acts 2:14, but Peter's standing up with the 11, and it's the 11 because Judas at that point had killed himself, so there are no longer 12 apostles, there are 11, raised his voice and said to them, "Men of Judea and all who dwell in Jerusalem, let this be known to you and heed my words." And then we want to look at the 11, or that Strong 1733, and see the usage. It's the 11, and of the 11 disciples alive after the death of Judas. But it also shows the places it's used. And it's in 6 different scriptures. And interestingly, in Matthew and Mark only once, but twice in Luke and twice in Acts. Matthew, of course, is written to the Jews. It's only shown once there. In Mark, it's written to the sleeping church, which is only shown once. But Luke, it's shown twice. In Acts, it's shown twice, and this is to the awake church. And in Luke, it's in chapter 24, which sort of alludes to 2024. Acts 2:15, for these are not drunken, as ye suppose, seeing it is but the third hour of the day, of course, 9 o'clock a.m., relating to that 8:53 time in the morning. And this would be the day for it, because that's where that time is most prominent. If we look at the two Acts scriptures that I just showed you, you'll see that's 2:14, 15. So 14, of course, is deliverance. 15 is rest. And we had that theme all throughout the eclipse on 4/8. And then if we count from Nisan 1, the beginning of this 18-week timeline, 3/23 last year to Pentecost, 5/19/2024, it's 423 days, not including the end date, or 424 including the end date. Those two numbers in Strong's, blameless, go up and ascend. So again, we're still talking rapture speak. If we look in the number pi at the year 2024, just look at the pure date, 5/19/2024, and it shows up in a number of places. And these are probably the three most relevant strings. The first string gives us grace, sing, be alive again, be restored to a correct life, to unloose for departure, which is rather interesting. This is probably the strongest rapture string I can find. And then after that, washing, baptism, a vanishing, and that's not 8:53. This is 8:54 now. 69 means to be sleepless, keep awake, watch. 394 is declare, communicate. 832 in the next string is pipe, or to play the flute or pipe. To buy, redeem, and then to live and large. And I thought that was kind of funny, live large. But anyway, probably the top one is the most respective to the rapture. And if I go back to the God of Israel and the Mayan calendar, I have some new things to add to it at this point. So a few videos ago, I was showing 5993, which would be 2023, in the Mayan long count calendar, where the long count is 5,125.366 tropical years. And we do a relationship to solve for X. In other words, we're relating that to 6,000 years of man, and then relating that, turning it into the long count calendar and solving for X. We get 5119.386, and if we divide by 6 to find out what each millennia is, it would be 853.23. Strong's Greek is 5119 is at that time. And then 853, of course, can mean Jesus if it's in the Hebrew, Aleph Tav, but if we look at it in the Greek, is to snatch out of sight, to put out of view, to make unseen. And if you look at the bottom, we divide by 6, by the long count, we actually get 854.23. 854 is a vanishing, a disappearance, and 23 seems to be the year. But this is something new now. If we look at the numbers after the decimal point above, 386, we get resurrection, rising again, a raising up, and then in usage, a rising from the dead, and rather interestingly, that of all men at the end of this present age. Okay, and if we change the variable a little bit, if we look at the year 5994, we're in 2024 now, and we solve, we get 5120.24, and if we divide by 6 to find out what a millennia is relatably in the Maya long count calendar, 853.373. And some new information here now. 366 is recover oneself. Strong's Concordance 5120 is his, And of course, this is speaking of Jesus because 853 follows, and he is the Aleph Tav. And 0.24 seems to indicate the year 2024. Strong's Greek is 853, snatch out of sight again. But we also have now 373, which is rest. And if we try to do this, if we skip another year, if we go to 5995 and try to play the same game, and we solve for x, we get 512109, and then 853 515. Well, 5121 is contrariwise, or on the contrary. In other words, you're looking at the wrong years, this is trying to say. And the number 9 symbolizes divine completeness or finality, I think, saying that this is already done by that time. And then if we look at the 515 after the decimal point, that means count worthy or think worthy. And it's also used in 2 Thessalonians 1:11. So there's that look at 1:11 again, which is clued us to the 40-day trial from 228 to 4:8, and also from 4:8 now to Pentecost. Okay, so now I found something interesting in Luke. Numbers 10:11 gave us the clue 2022, which is 202, and 22 overlapping. 202, of course, was that time in the sign, and it's also the addition of 55 representing Jesus and 125 representing the church and 22 heaven. So if you add all three of those together, you get 202. And then 22, of course, represents heaven because there's a description of heaven in Revelation 22. Eclipse over Carbondale was at 20202. Okay, so let's get into Luke. Now it's, again, Luke 17:34 says, I tell you that night there shall be 2 men in one bed, and one shall be taken and the other shall be left. And then this same theme continues on in 35 and 36. So we have, if you look in the top row, you see total 2, and then taken is 1, and left is 1, and then that happens for the other 2 verses as well. So we've got 2, 1, 1. Well, we have, if you look at it in one direction, you get 222, and then you get 111 and 111, and this seems to be the time tree that we were looking at, 202 in the middle and 111 on either side, counting out, giving us a 40 or 41 day count, depending on how you look at it, or 211. So we have 3 cases of 211 or 211. And if we look at as a thief that's used in Scripture, or if we look at it in California Police Code, 211, of course, is for a robbery or armed robbery, which is covered by California Penal Code Section 211. And there are 5 verses that use the thief or am coming as a thief. Revelation 16:15, behold, I'm coming as a thief. Matthew 24:43, watch, that had known what hour the thief would have come. He would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Thessalonians 5:2, as a thief. 1 Thessalonians 5:4, as a thief. And finally in 2 Peter 3:10, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. So we have as a thief, the same theme in 5 different scriptures. And May 19th is ER 11, which is 211 on the Hebrew calendar. So this seems to be Jesus saying he's going to come as a thief, and it's alluding to the date 211 in a sort of a tongue-in-cheek sort of way. I thought this was rather interesting how he arrives at that. 211 in progress. Robbery is used 4 times in a row. If we look at Strong's G724 Harpazo, we get pillage, plundering, and the usage is robbery. Strong's G725 is harpagmos, which is robbery. And interestingly, if we go to the usage, one of them is a booty or a prize, and we had seen that word before too in G1017. So there's robbery and prize, and then 726 harpazo, of course, to seize, catch up, snatch away. And usage obtained by robbery. And Strong's G727 Harpax is extortioner, ravening, and in usage, a robber. So we've got 4 different usages in a row, 4 different words in a row in Strong's that mean robbery. And the prime suspect is the Aleph Tav. And I also thought this was rather interesting. I had been seeing 211 for about the past couple months or so. And here's an example of it, but I didn't know what it meant. I just figured this out short time ago, but I had been seeing a lot of 211. Okay, so going back to the first witness, I wanted to look at the 5 witnesses that I had spoken about before in a video a long time ago, because I have something to add to it now in hindsight. And the first witness was talking about the signs in the sky, 7/26/2023 to 11/25/2025 is 853 days. Okay, I had posted that previously. And then we confirm it by 3/30/2025, which is Nissan 1 that year, to the 11/25, gives us 7 months, 26 days. So here you've got this block of 853 days that starts with 726 and ends with 726. So it's associating Harpazo with 853. And either way you look at 853, it's either Aleph Tav or it's a vanishing away. So, and that's as far as I went. But you can also split out 726 days to 1 year, 11 months, 26 days. And 2 of the signs that I had looked at before are the 2014-2015 blood moon tetrad. And out of that we get 14 and 15, of course, again, which is deliverance and rest. And that's, if we're counting, we get the 726 days from the September 28th of the last blood moon to the 2017 Revelation 12 sign. And we had other day counts to other signs that gave sudden and unchangeable. So we know this is talking about the rapture being sudden and unchangeable. Also, in the 26 days up there, Strong's G26 is love, agape, love, charity, so on. And from 3/20/15, that is the eclipse in the middle of those 4 blood moons, to 4/8, the eclipse this year, is 9 years, 19 days. And that, of course, gives us the date 9/19 last year, which was the big signs, right? The child asteroid being born from Virgo, and then the head being joined to the body of Virgo, the head being Jesus, the body being the church. And then 9/28/2015 to 4/8, the eclipse this year, is 3115 days. If we look that up in Strong's, we get long suffering and patience, which it was a little bit of a letdown after this huge sign happened, this huge eclipse, but nothing, no rapture yet. So this is saying patience. And if we go from 9/28/2015, that eclipse again in the blood moons, to 5/19, which is Pentecost this year, we get 3156. And that is Matthew, or gift of Jehovah. And here we have this prize or gift theme again. Okay, so 7/26/2023, that date to Pentecost this year is 298 days, and that is without rebuke or blameless. And here's something interesting that pops up. If we count from 5/19 or Pentecost this year to 11/25 and 2025, we get 555 days. Well, that's kind of reminiscent of the galactic alignment sign that gave us a 555. It gave us, 5 years, 5 days, 5 hours. And 5, of course, is the number of grace. And then Strong's 555, putting off, and it's used only one time, and this is really interesting. It's in Colossians 2:11. So we've got there that 2:11 again. In him you were also circumcised in the putting off of your sinful nature, with the circumcision performed by Christ and not by human hands. So we've got all this leading to 2:11 again. And if we map out or we look at all the Pentecosts from 2023 up to 2031 in the table there's only one Pentecost that happens on IR 11 or 211, and that's this year in 2024. And I'm not going to read all this, but I'm just going to highlight the second, third, and fourth witnesses. The second was 125th day and Scripture, and we found in James 4:14 the word time appears in the same sentence as vanisheth away, which is G853, cluing us that 853 is the time. And then the scenarios in Matthew 24, 40, and 41 give us daytime scenarios, which tells us it's 8:53 a.m. The other interesting part, I thought I didn't say anything about this before, but Matthew 24, the year 2024, 40 through 41, the day count from April 8th is either 40 or 41 days to Pentecost, depending on how you count it. So let's go. The third witness, hidden in the number pi, there was a string 726, 2023, 853, 6, which gives the time, the Harpazo time. And the number 6 at the end alludes to Abel, which is Strong's G6. He lived Anno Mundi, which gives us AM. So here again we have Harpazo, 2023, which is when it was revealed, 853, 6. And then the fourth witness in the Mayan calendar, we had 2 days, 725 and 726. 725 is day out of time, and then 726 is the first day of the planetary new year. Those were the days the child asteroid was revealed. And we also get from the day counts, or the year counts, I believe it was on a, it was on year counts. It was on a long count, year count table that I showed. And we end up with 853 years, I believe it was, 853.23. And then H3118 pops up, and that tells us that this is during the day. So it should be AM. And that's about it for those. I'm just trying to show you that 853 seems to be showing up in all of the witnesses. And if we go to the last one, the fifth witness, it did not, 726 did not turn out to be the date. It turned out to be, 726, Harpazo. So this is saying 726, 7 spirits of God, 26 is the numerical value of Yahweh. And then for the sun, we have Hebrew 853, which is the Aleph Tav. And if you add those together, the Aleph is the first letter and the Tav is the 22nd letter. We get 23. So there is the time, 853:23. And Jesus, the sun, is the bright morning star, which means this is AM. And Israel gives us the time zone, Israel daylight time. And I added heaven because the Revelation 2:11, it seems to be pointing towards where our destination is. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches, that's us. He who overcomes shall not be hurt by the second death. In other words, body changed, glorified, and then destination heaven. So this, and then again, this is 2:11. And Revelation 4:4, around the throne were 24 thrones. This alludes to the year 2024. I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white robes, and they had crowns of gold on their heads. And if you look up 4:4 in Strong's, you get hook or a fishing hook. And this is the theme that we had for the eclipse on 4:8. I took you through that in several different places. We had a fishing trip theme. And finally, Revelation 22:16, and this talks about Jesus being the bright and morning star. So that's where we get the AM from. So put that all together, and we get the fifth witness, which is from the names. 726 Harpazo, 853:23 AM, Israel daylight time. This time on May 19th, Pentecost, and this is where that time is really, really relevant. The third hour of the day, or 9 AM. And of course, this is 2:11 on the Hebrew calendar. When we looked at the galactic alignment, 1222, we got 2 different times out of it, which means we have 2 different alephs. This is an aleph that occurs at 1:53:23 p.m. Then we got another one. This is using 2 different ecliptics. We use either the ecliptic J2000 or the ecliptic of date. So using 2 different ecliptics gives us 2 different times and therefore 2 different alephs. And here's another aleph at 2:02 p.m. Israel time. Then moving forward to the solar eclipse and planet lineup on 4/8 at 2:02:02 in Carbondale, Illinois. If we look at both the horizon and the ecliptic of date there, then we have all the planets lining up very close together near the horizon, and actually one is below the horizon, that's Pluto. But I don't know if you really consider that. That's not one of the classic planets. That's actually now a dwarf planet. But it's there nevertheless, and these are all in the field of view in Stellarium. And we also have Comet there as well, 12P Pons Brooks. Pons Brooks means bridge and small stream or water. And this forms a Tav. So we had 2 alephs on 1222 last year, and now we've got a Tav on the day of the eclipse this year. And then if we zoom in, you can see in the crosshairs Capricornus, and let's see here, I took the date 8th of April 2024, or can be written 842024. Strong's 8420 is Tav, so it seems to be pointing us to the Tav, and I will raise them up at the last day, and that's symbolically was on April 8th, but if you look at Pentecost, that would be the last day of the church. It was birthed on Pentecost, and now it looks like it will be removed on Pentecost. And this is from the Kaduri connection, the Kaduri prophecy. And if you look again, the Aleph on galactic alignment on 1222, it's 108 days or 15 weeks, 3 days, like the 153 big fish, to the Tav on the solar eclipse, 4/8. And then Capricornus, of course, is a mythical creature that's half goat, half fish, which speaks to the dichotomy of the good and the bad happening that day or there soon thereafter. Half goat, meaning the Antichrist will appear, and half fish, meaning the fish will leave. Okay, now here's another interesting find I had, but this is on May 19th. This is on Pentecost. There's another planet lineup, and this one is more broad. This one is almost all the way across the sky. And if you notice, on the left-hand side, you can see the bright sun, and then the planets are lined up to the right of that all the way to Pluto, which is the reticule on the right-hand side. And we have 2 comets now. We've got 13P Aubers, and then we also have that 12P Pons Brooks. And then lined up, we have the Sun, Jupiter, Venus, Uranus, Mercury, Mars, Neptune, Saturn, Pluto, all lined up. And I had to distort this slightly in order to show all the planets in one view. You have to show the overhead in one view, so it has to distort to do that. But if you notice, it has kind of a ichthys, or the fish. Remember the symbol of the early Christian church? It has sort of that shape to it. So let's remove the ground, ichthys in the sky. Let's remove the ground and leave the horizon there, and you can see there's that what looks like ichthys, the fish. And please forgive my poor freehand drawing of the fish, but there it is. And if we measure the width to height ratio, it's 3.66, and that number is very interesting because it shows up in a couple of different places. If we use Strong's, if you round up to 3.7, we can look up 37 and we get sanctify, hallow, and be holy. If we look up just the 366 without rounding, we see recover oneself. But if we go to the Maya long count calendar, the round is 5,125.366 tropical years. And there's a lot packed into that number. 5 represents grace. 125 represents the church or the child being caught up in Revelation 12:5. And then 366, again, represents recover oneself. So there's a lot packed into that number. And this all happens on Pentecost 519. So let's explore Comet 13P Aubers just a bit. There was a story in Sky and Telescope by Mike Ollison on April 25th this year. And in the image, you can see it has a magnitude of 8.4, which is interesting. That alludes to the 8th of April, or also the widow of 84 years at the temple. The number, different places, very important number. Comet 13P Aubers is brightening nicely and is now magnitude 8.4, low in the western skies when it gets dark. And this also takes us to read about Aubers' paradox, why the sky is dark at night. It used to be a paradox, not so much now. We used to think that the universe was infinite in all directions back in the time that this paradox was written. And why the sky is dark at night? Well, if you think about it, if you go out so far in space, you have so many stars. If you go out a little bit further in space, you have more stars behind that fill in more and more spaces of the stars that you see. If we go out further, then of course more stars that fill in more spaces. And if it's infinite, then we go out in an infinite direction. We have so many stars, there's no longer any space. And we should have a bright sky even at night. Well, in recent times, we found that, of course, that the universe is not infinite. It's finite in all directions and expanding. So it's no longer really a paradox. It fits that since the universe is finite in all directions, then it will be dark at night because there is some space in between the stars out there. And this must be, for this comet to show up that day, this may be God's way of saying, hey, your universe is finite. I made it. I'm the creator, perhaps. And there's a few other things in the sky. If we go to the other end of the spectrum and do a close-up, we see that there's Iris, an asteroid Iris. And I was talking about the galactic alignment last year on 1222 as being a giant eye in the sky. Well, this relates to the eye, the iris, a part of the eye. And I thought that was interesting imagery. And on the left, you see Jonan. It's kind of behind a bunch of bushes there, but it's still above the horizon. And Jonan means a dove. And this is all about the dove or the Holy Spirit, this day is. And on the right-hand side, we have the child asteroid in Aquila, constellation Aquila, which is Latin for eagle. And the child, there's the imagery of flying. So the child looks like it's going to be flying on that day. And then at the bottom, Ceres, which is a dwarf planet, it's also kind of behind the bushes a bit there, but again, above the horizon. Ceres in Greek means wax, and Ceres in Italian means waxes. So, if we think about the moon waxing and waning, in the waxing state, it grows larger. So this day is waxing, or something is happening or growing larger on that day. And if we go at the other end, look at the other end of the ecliptic, we can see that we have the Sun, Jupiter, Venus, and Uranus all in a tight area there near Taurus. And Jupiter, of course, is the king planet. The Sun sometimes is likened to the Father. Venus, of course, is Jesus, represents Jesus. And Uranus is literally, in the Greek, means heaven. So all those things are very close together. But not only that, they're near the Pleiades, or the seven sisters, which represent the Lord's power and wisdom in the story from Job. And if we look up Pleiades, Strong's Hebrew 3598 is Pleiades, or seven stars. And in the Greek, 3598 is the way, wayside, journey, or highway. And journey seems to fit here really well in regards to the rapture. Okay, so in the planet lineup on 519 also forms a Tav if we go near the horizon. So we're still near that Jupiter, Venus, Uranus, and the Sun. In Taurus, we're still near that, looking at the crossing of the ecliptic with the horizon, and we get a Tav. So now we've had a Tav on 4/8. Now we have a Tav appearing on 519 Pentecost, and this is justifiable because all the planets are lined up on that ecliptic of date, pointing us to this. All right, now just to give a little bit of background again on the two 11-year-long signs. If we look at the annular solar eclipses over Albuquerque, New Mexico, there are two that are 11 years apart, 5/20/2012, and of course the one in the middle of the three great American eclipses on 10/14. And this is sort of a wedding announcement with a sign of Jonah. 153 big fish, or the church, because of the time. We have 3.5 weeks later, which relates to the 84 hours, or the woman, the widow at the temple. So we've got a sign of Jonah going on here, but we also have a conjunction, Moon-Venus conjunction sign at 153.23 on 11/9 last year. And if we look at the bottom, the galactic alignments as seen from Jerusalem, Israel, one was on 12/21/2012 at 6:66 p.m., and then the other was at 12/22 last year at two different times, of course, 2:02 and 1:53:53. The Rapture sign, it announces 2:02 as the time and day count from 9/19, which was the day of all those signs, the child asteroid and the head being joined to the body. And then 2:02 also ties both 11-year signs together by the time, because we've got 2:02 in the time on the 12/22, and then we have 2:02 in the final eclipse on April 8th as the time over Carbondale. So that ties those two 11-year signs together. And you can see it here. I kind of give a logic diagram. At the top, 12/21 was the galactic alignment at 666. Then 11 years later, galactic alignment with two Alephs at 2:02 and 1:53. And then below, we have 11 years apart, we have the annular eclipse over Albuquerque at 5/20/2012, and then 10/14/2023. Two annular eclipses over the same place. And then vertically, you can see that there are three eclipses over America, 8/21, 2017, then that annular eclipse, and then finally the 4/8 total eclipse, which gives us a Tav. And that was at 14/22 or 2:02:02. And then I also put in the 4/7, which is the moon occulting Venus the day before that eclipse, just to give us the time. It's a reminder that 2:02:02 is not the real time of the rapture, as I thought, but it's still inserting or injecting that same time, that 8:53:23, saying, keep looking at this. You know, I've been looking at it for nearly a year now, and keep looking at this. It's going to happen. And then you look at Pentecost 5/19, and then I've put in that time 8:53:23, where you just saw the Tav, and you saw everything going on in the stellarium. And so we have a Tav, we have two Alephs on 12/22/2023, and then we have two Tavs on 4/8 and 5/19 this year. And that ties those two 11-year signs together. So a lot of you have been seeing 11/11. Well, for good reason. They're two 11-year-long signs, and they're tied together by an Aleph Tav, or not just one, but two. And two of them are in the ecliptics, and two of them are in the planet lineups. So something interesting happens here. If we go 5/19/2024 minus 153 days, because we didn't see 153 in the time there, did we? So let's explore somewhere else. If we subtract 153 days, that takes us to 12/18 last year. 12/18 is people. So we're looking for fish. We're looking for 153 big fish. And this 12/18 is saying people. If we go from 12/21/2012 to 12/22/2023, that's the bookends of the 11-year-long signs. We have 40/18 days, or 11 years, 1 day, and then 40/18 is covering. In other words, this was covered up. This was not exposed, or no one knew about this during that 11 years. 2023 was the year of uncovering, and that's thanks to Drayton Bunyan, who told us about the 2023 block of digits in pi with 602 at both ends. And 602, of course, in Strong's is uncovering. Then 5/20/2012 to 8/21/2017 is 19 days, or 5 years, 3 months, 1 day. 5, of course, is the number of grace. And 1919 means earthly, terrestrial, or in Earth. And we had 3 great American eclipses forming an Aleph Tav on the Earth. So I guess this is pointing us to look for that. And then G31, the message in that is, it's a message or an announcement. And 5/20/2012 to 10/14/2023 is 4164 days, or 11 years, 4 months, 24 days. And 424, of course, means to go up. And 5/20/2012, again, to 4/8/2024 is 41 days, or 11 years, 10 months, 19 days. And if we look at the 4341, means call to, and then 1019 means tarry. So we are called to tarry when we hit April 8th, I believe. I believe that means that he's telling us here to call to tarry, because nothing is going to happen yet. He's telling us to wait. 5/20/2012 to 5/19/2024 is 4382 days. This is all the way up until Pentecost. 11 years, 11 months, 29 days. It's pushing the limit, but it hasn't hit 12 years yet. And if we look at 4382, it's with respective persons. So that sounds like a judgment, or the respective persons that are going to be going in the rapture. And 1111 is murmur, or a cooing of doves. And there's that dove symbology, the Holy Spirit again. And then 29 days, G29 is to impress or compel. And we've seen that in the Harpazo and Harpagmos and all that we will be compelled, or will be impressed to go. This will be by force. And, okay, so we have two 11-year-long signs, 2 times 11, or 211. That's even in the signs. That is, the 211 shows up, and then, of course, that alludes, now we know, to ER 11 on the Hebrew, and that's the Hebrew date for the Pentecost this year. Asteroid Groom in Aquarius. Okay, talking about the age, I showed this before, that Groom was in Aquarius in a number of different interesting places on Pentecost. If we look at 2012 and 2023, those were the beginning and end of the 11-year-long signs. Groom is in Aquarius on the Pentecost those days. Then this year, after the 11-year-long sign completes, then on May 19th, on Pentecost, it's in Cetus, which is the whale. So this is pointing towards the sign of Jonah, of course. And then this, as regard to the solar eclipse, 2012, it was in Aquarius. And then in 2023, again, it was in Aquarius. And this is in regard to the solar eclipse 11-year-long sign. And then, of course, 2012 and 2023 for the galactic alignment. So the Groom is sort of mapping out or bookending these 11-year-long signs to tell us the age is about to change. The world population, it has actually hit 8.11 billion people now since we've gone past the eclipse date and all that. If you round it up, 8.106 will round up to 8.11. So, you know, in the strictest sense, we are at 811 billion people now, and that the change happened on, or actually this world population count was taken on 4:48 p.m. 5/1/2024, and I'm using worldodometers.info. So I must revise my interpretation of Christina's dream. Revise it to say that we've hit 811 people now, and it looks like the change is going to be from the rapture. The 811 people disappear, and that's why people are running around trying to find them. So we estimated last year we had 8.10 billion people. Out of that, we got some interesting, just for fun, we got some interesting numbers. 1.44 billion sealed Christians on the 179th day. That was 9/18 last year. Would be going in the rapture, and then 6.66 billion people left behind. So some very interesting numbers pop out of that when you do the calculation, just for fun. And Patrick writes, late wife Christina, I'll just rehash this again, just go over it real quick. She had a dream in which she described like this: so I was at work and everyone was seeing the number 725. And of course, that was the date now that the child asteroid was revealed to Patrick, but nobody could find the number 811. And everybody was going frantic, all crazy, pretty much just losing their minds. Patrick recalls it like this: 725 was there, but no one could find 811. Well, now I believe, since we're past the point of rounding up to 811, that the world population plummets from 8.11 billion people. And I don't think it's going to hit 812, because if it does, then Christina's dream would no longer be valid. So, assuming that she's right, assuming this was an inspired, God-inspired dream, then we should not hit 8.12 billion people at all. And if you plot this, we can see, I'm just using 9/9/2023 as a day I started collecting this information. But if you plot some points, I added a few more to this, and the number 9, of course, is divine completeness or finality. If we solve for 811, 8.11 billion people exactly, this gives 250 days from that date, and we get May 16th. So this means that we would hit 8.11 billion people 3 days before Pentecost this year. So if Pentecost does happen, rapture happens on Pentecost, then there should be 811 billion people, 8.11 billion people on Earth, and then a sudden disappearance of a big chunk of those people means that there are going to be people running around trying to find 811. And if we solve for 812 or 8.12 billion people, that gives 299 days, and that gives us the outside limit, which would be July 4th. So we're looking at this according to her dream. I mean, if this is accurate, then we're looking at a rapture that has to happen before July 4th. Okay, so about the Lord escape, if one did exist, be there to witness the escape of the bride. It looks like it may be on May 19th, starting 8:53:23 a.m., Pentecost, Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. And I did this chart again, only this time adjusted it for the Pentecost robbery, 5/18/19/2024. So this, if you're in Israel, this gives the date or a day and time as 5:19 and 8:53:23 a.m., as I've been seeing for nearly a year now. And in the U.S., it gives the adjusted times for Eastern, Central, Mountain Time, and so on and so forth, depending on what time zone you're in. So I hope this is it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.